Hey Fish Tube, how's it going? Today we're going to talk about how to build a fish room on a budget. My first piece of advice is try to start small. I started my fish room with one fish tank. It was a 29 gallon. That's how I got everything cycled and started. I just started with some Danios and tiger barbs, a couple plecos. And that's how I started my room, because I wanted to make sure that I had cycled tanks before I started spending a ton of money on expensive fish. Next piece of advice is look for used tanks. Now here locally we have a thing called KSL, and it's basically a place where people go and sell used items. I'm sure every state has it. If not, you know, you can talk to your fish store. Maybe they might know somebody who has used tanks, and even fish stores, some fish stores sell used equipment. But I have a rule where I do not spend more than $1 a gallon for used tanks. Now that's my max. Usually when I go, I try to buy fish rooms. I see 20 gallons for $200. That's absurd, because people are trying to make their money back. And I get it, and some of them might get that back where they're selling the package. Now I just want the tank. I don't want stands, lids. If they're included, that's great, but I can make cheap lids. So a recent example is I just bought 9 20s. Now 6 of those 20s actually had the polycarbonate lid, which I'll show you later in the video. And I think I ended up paying like 67 cents a gallon. So still a little bit on the higher end. I like that 50 cent, but because it was a package and I could get them all at once, it was worth the drive to pay that. And we did some negotiating, and it was a very fair deal for him, because he was closing down his fish room, or part of his fish room, and he had his tanks and he wanted to get rid of them. So for him, selling them all in a package made more sense than selling them one at a time, so people come to his home over and over again. Now, when you're buying these, you want to be patient, because you don't want to jump on the first deal you see. If you sit and wait, those deals will come around, or people will tell you about something going on. So I try to buy in the packages. So that's my number one rule, is to be patient. I don't jump on deals right away. And sometimes people are a little bit higher than that $1, and I'll contact them and they don't want to sell it because they want a certain amount of money, and I respect that. But what I'll do is in like 3 weeks or a month, I'll contact them back. I'll say, hey, did you get those tanks sold? And probably about 50% of the time they haven't, and they just want to get rid of them. So they're going to sell them to me at the price that I want to buy them at, for a little bit less. Now, if you breed fish, you know at night we need to have night lights on, especially if they're protecting eggs or small fry. We want to have a dim light in there so the fry can find the parents on the discus, but also can find their way around the tank. And what happens is, if you don't have a night light on some of the breeders that take care of their fry, in the morning, the parents can sometimes get spooked and they'll turn around and eat the fry. So having that night light on there. So what I do is I just take a night light, literally the ones you plug into the wall, and then I just super glue it directly onto a piece of glass that I get at Home Depot for almost nothing. I think it's a couple bucks. And then I run an extension cord onto that, and then I can daisy chain those extension cords if I need more lights. But what I also do is I stick a blue tape under the light, and it tends to act like more like a moonlight with that blue tape. So I would say it's a few bucks for those. It was just a way for me to solve this issue for almost no money. Also, you'll see on my water change, so you'll see these white sticks on the front of my tanks or on the side of my tanks. So all my tanks, I have a PEX, and it's a PEX for water lines, and I cut them to size. And then what happens is I put a little piece of tape at the top, and then I just take a good hose. So that's one thing I want to say is buy quality hoses, because the cheaper ones tend to kink a lot. So you'll see the water changing hose. It's worth it paying a little bit more money for those, because they tend, and the hoses I have are 30 years old and they still work. They don't kink or anything like that. So I would say spend a little bit more money on the hose, because short term there's nothing worse than getting kinks in your hoses when you're pulling them. But this way I have one hose in my entire fish room, because I used to have, you know, a hose for each tank, and it got insane because I couldn't keep track of what hose went where, and I was cross-contaminating. Now I'm not so concerned with most fish, but my discus I am concerned. I do not want to bring anything that touches another tank into their tank. It's just a personal thing that I find that cuts a lot of disease out. So those PEX goes right into the hose. It's very efficient, and I literally have one 6-foot hose that I use in the entire room, but I use these PEX cleaners. And what's nice is they kind of target the areas I want to clean because I siphon off the bottom. Now they're not going to work real well with sand bottoms, so these are mostly for bare bottoms, but they can be used to take out water volume out of the middle of the tank. And then on a lot of my tanks, I use a 1-inch hose, and I just have like a 4-foot section, and that's to remove water quickly because time is important. Time is money. So for me, if I want to drain a 75-30%, I don't want to use these tiny little hoses. I want to get some water flow out of there, and I want to drain that tank within 5 minutes. So really the PEX are for the Discus, but I use them in all my tanks, especially if I have any questions or new fish. If they're brand new, I want to make sure that they're healthy. I'm getting questions on my lids. What kind of lids do I use? So the tanks that I just bought came with the polycarbonate lids. I have never bought those because I can't find them locally, but I hear they're at Home Depot, so they might be at your Home Depot. Now here's the problem. Materials on everything has gone up. When I built this room a year ago, materials were still reasonable, but it's still worth it, because to put glass lids throughout this room as I have it right now, you're probably looking at a couple grand, and I've probably done it for a couple hundred. So for me, I can take that money, buy quality fish, breed those fish, make money, and then upgrade the lids as I need if I want. But you'll notice on my Discus tanks, I have a kind of an accordion lid where I flip back twice. That's so I can get back with my PEX, so I can kind of stand at the front of the tank. I'm not reaching into the tank. I can flip that open, have full view, get everything I want, and not hit any of the fish with the siphon, because that can get a little tricky, hitting a fish with a siphon hose. But what I've found over time, the fish know when it's water change time, and actually some of them love it, and they get out of the way. So they know what's going on and they understand it, and usually they understand that when I'm doing a water change, the next step is after the water change is a good feeding. So they're usually excited when I break out that hose, and it's kind of like they see that PEX coming in, and then they know that food's coming in soon. So but I think I'm going to keep the, so it's just a corrugated yard sign, and I cut that to size. You just cut it with a scissor. And I like those for the Discus because it gives me access. I can flip up one and just get front access, or I can flip up two and get double access and get a deeper cleaning into that tank. I really have enjoyed using them, but on my 10 gallons, you'll see I have them. Eventually, I'm going to upgrade those to glass. Now, some people like the hinge. I prefer the slide for me personally, because I don't like, for one, the hinge hitting and then it hitting the back glass. So I'll probably go more into a slide overlap with the glass on glass. That's just personal. And I buy the glass at Home Depot, and I buy it in sheets for a few dollars. And it's easy to cut. So my only thing on cutting glass is when you score it, just score it once and stop, and it'll break. If you try to score multiple times, it tends to go off the line, and it doesn't want to break even, and usually it's a jagged edge. If you just score a nice solid, and you can hear it like screech against that glass, and you crack it, it tends to give you that nice clean break. So that took me a while to learn, and really I could have just went online and learned that, but I thought, you would score it and you would really get a nice score, but it's really just a single score crack. That's not thick. It's very thin millimeter glass. I can't remember exactly what it is, and if that's something you need to know, you can comment me and I can look that up. But it's just the thinnest glass at Home Depot. And you'll see the corrugated plastic. This is one I really liked because I was able to buy it in big sheets and cut it, and I literally can cut it with scissors. I use tin snips and I can cut it. But what I do is I lay it on the tank, and then I just take a black marker and I mark the line, and then I just cut across that line. So for me, and then some people have said, oh, well, it has those little gaps. Aren't fish never had a fish go up and out and over the rim. Never happened to me. Usually when a fish gets out, it's because the lid's off. But once those corrugated lids, and those lids snap on. So if you cut them right, you can snap them and they stick. They're not just resting, they're actually seated pretty good. And if you seat them good, that hole on the side gets a little smaller. So I like these because it's a great option at a low budget price. Because here's the thing, I want to spend my money on quality fish to breed those fish, and that's how I make money. So I'm about $10,000 into this room my first year. This is my third fish room, and I really learned a lot building my other ones because my first one I went all out, and it took me a while to recover all the money I had invested. So that's one thing I like is starting small, using whatever you can around your home as much as possible to make it happen. Go buy quality fish, and there's other things that I spent money on that I would not cut corners on, and I'll go over that. But really the fish is the key because you're building a fish room if you're building it to breed to make money. So I'm about at $8,000 right now, so I'm still a negative $2,000 in my first year. But I plan to make that up within the summer and start showing a profit. Now there's food and water, electricity, but also I've come up with ways to save money there. See my dehumidifier. Now this thing is crucial for a fish room because you want to keep the humidity between 40 and 60. 50 is kind of my range. 60 I have no problem with. 40 is optimal as far as you know you're not really causing any issues in your home. But I got this on KSL, which is my local, paper that you buy used and sell used stuff on. And I think I paid $50 for this dehu. It works amazing, but what people I think a lot of people don't realize is yes, it takes moisture, and this dehu is actually hooked up to a drain, so it's automatic. It's always pulling water out of the air. But another thing is it gives off heat. So it gives off a lot of heat. When it's pulling water, it's throwing some serious heat. So it actually acts as a heater in my fish room, and I try to keep my fish room between 80 and 84 degrees. Now that sounds pretty warm, but you got to remember I have Discus in there, and even on my Discus tanks I do put heaters as backups. But I've actually sat and had my daughter look at those for an hour, how often those heaters click on, and I think we did it a couple times, and it literally was under 5 minutes the heater kicked on a couple times. So the dehu is huge. Now I'm going to talk about things that I don't skimp on or I don't cut corners on. So when I built this room, one thing that I found in older rooms was trying to use too much electricity. So I'm always trying to keep the electricity down, and by heating the room, the heaters don't really affect my electrical bill at all. But I have a pump that runs continuously, but it's like 30 something watts. It's insane as far as how low wattage it is. So that's one thing I don't skip on is I had a licensed electrician come in, and he put the GCIF or the breakers in the switches, so if water gets on something. Now I put all my switches about 3 foot high, 3 to 4 foot high, because I didn't want them lower for dripping and stuff like that. But for me, it's just easier to get to those at that level. So, but I did pay an electrician, and I made sure he was licensed, because one thing you don't mess with fire or even water. You want to be real careful. So my electrician and my plumber, I didn't cut corners there. Very important that that's done correctly, especially electricity. I can't stress that enough. If you're going to have a fish room, you want it professionally done, and you don't want overload. You don't want to overload your system. So I have, I think, 4 breakers total on my fish room, and 1 breaker is not even being used yet. It's just a backup down the road for growth. So, I'm at Walmart or the dollar store. My kids love the dollar store, so as they are getting their $3 or $4 worth of stuff when we go there for a family outing, I go through and I buy little containers, and you'll see this wall, and these are all containers I've bought at the dollar store. But these racks, these black racks, actually I bought at Walmart for like 20-25 bucks. So I'm always looking for deals. So Walmart is a great place to buy all the extra stuff. And one thing I got to say is, as you build a fish room, you're going to get lots of like down tubes and and screens and everything, fill up a bucket full of it, because you wouldn't believe how many times I've went to that extra parts to fix something or to put something together, or as I used to say, MacGyver something. I wanted to fix something, and going to those extra parts is huge. You can never have enough of the little knickknacks and stuff like that. So save those if you're going to build a fish room, because you need, you're going to always need something, whether it's a screen or a down tube or an old air stone or something. So those just go into, and I have 2 Tupperware containers just full, and literally when I have an issue that I can't figure out right away, I open those up and I look in there, and every time I figure. You'll see a lot of Terra Cotta. So I love Terra Cotta because it's just a great hide, so the caves and everything. But even the pleco caves, those aren't pleco caves that you'll see in my fish room. Those are actually Terra Cotta watering sticks, and you can get them on Amazon for like $1.50. Now if you go to buy the real ones, they're up to like $10-15, and you'll even see in my Discus tanks, you'll see those towers. Those are bought locally from a store. I'm not going to say right away. If you want to comment me and ask me, I can tell you, but I want to go buy those because they're such an amazing deal. The ones that would have the little rim at the bottom, they're like 15-16 bucks. And I had a couple of them, and actually I don't like those, so I actually put those in my pleco, my big plecos in my tub, and flip it over on the side, and it's actually a pleco cave now. So I use these towers, and they're like, so there's always a sale, and I get them for like $4. I have probably about 8 right now, and because I'm going to be starting up Discus, I'm probably going to go buy 8 to 10 more. Save you a ton of money. And what's nice about them is they're taller, so the Discus can really spawn. And if you watch the Discus spawn, usually they're still spawning because they're taller. They're still spawning on that top part of it. So they really enjoy the height of it. And very rarely do they ever spawn on the glass anymore because of those towers. I think are just perfect, but they're so stable. Because on the Terra Cotta, when you go and buy Terra Cotta, here's my suggestion. Go to like a Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever your hardware store, and ask them if they have any broken Terra Cotta. And sometimes a broken Terra Cotta to them is just a small chip in a corner. And I've literally come home with a tub full of Terra Cotta for like $10. And it would have regularly cost me about, $60-70 for all this Terra Cotta. And some of it is broken, some of it's chipped, some of it has small little imperfections on or whatever. And sometimes they won't do it, and sometimes they'll just give it to you because it's just going in the trash anyways. So just a great way. And I'm always asking places, hey, do you have anything broken as far as Terra Cotta or even 2x4s? Sometimes they get really warped 2x4s, and I can use those as braces or something, and they'll just kind of give them to me, or 10 cents on the dollar. So always be asking and looking out for deals at home improvement stores. Even the lights. So the lights you'll see in my room, I bought those all for like a 20% cost because of damage to the boxes. And basically that's all I do is I find the manager, and it might sound cheap, but they know they're not going to be able to sell that thing at full price because of the box is damaged. Because usually when you see a damaged box, usually they think what's inside is damaged. So, and if you've ever known someone that worked at one of those stores, or if you've ever worked there, they don't take a lot of care in unloading and loading stuff. So always damaged boxes. If you ask, they usually at least give you 50% off, but sometimes up to 80% off. I've even got up to 90% off on damaged boxes.